Welcome to What in the Smut podcast,
where the books are horny and so are we. I'm Elle and I write fantasy smut.
and I'm Kay and I write contemporary smut. Last episode we ended on a cliffhanger in our discussion of Morning Glory Milking Farm, so we're going to skip the Smutverse news and get right back into it. If you're just joining us, this is part 2 of Morning Glory Milking Farm, so you're going to want to listen to part 1 so you don't miss any of the juicy details leading up to Violet and her Minotaur's romance.
There's so much here that's so well done. It's so so bizarre for a monster romance, but like he is much more established in his career. He's obviously got a good amount of wealth. Like
it does say he's 10 years her senior. So yes, he's like late 30s because she's late 20s.
Yes. Yep. So 10 years of career building. He started his own company. And so like part of when they start seeing each other is like he wants to ensure that she realizes that he likes her for her.
Yes.
And
if they
so
wanted to, they would.
Yes. So he is very clear about when he's going to use his money and why. Like, he wants to take care of her. He wants her to feel like she doesn't have to kind of like spend herself dry to hang out with him. It's not meant to be a down payment on her time. It's simply that he is further along in his career and has more dispensable income. Like, and that additional step of like, if he were coming to the farm and like tipping her, that blurs the lines a little bit between like their relationship as a relationship and as like a sexual transaction. Yes. And so like that's why he stops going, despite the fact that she was like, no, it's okay, of course you can still like come, like you should. And but that's not what lesson he's trying to teach.
So they're still talking as they're finishing up, and she tells him that she went to like this coffee shop. He's like, oh, that place is awful. You need to go to Black Sheep. They're over. Mm-hmm. So he's asking her like where she hangs out and giving her suggestions. And I said this would be like a HIPAA kind of situation, which is like where your doctor, if they see you out in public, is not allowed to be the one to
indicate that they know you.
So I'm like,
before you approach them.
I'm like, would this be like a HIPAA violation if she sees him outside of the facility? Where like if she says, oh, hey, and like he doesn't, it's like, again, blurring those lines of, is this a clinical kind of situation? Is there the client confidentiality piece of it? Or like, does everybody just assume whatever? Then she gets home, and this is very strange. So she gets home, and it says she was still sitting there when the room began to grow dim, the sunlight outside waning as the evening rolled in, but she had no desire to get up and start dinner, no desire to count the money from her collection of blue envelopes, already knowing what she'd find there. I said, I feel like this like depressive episode that she's having right now is the opposite of how she should have left that day. Like she had that, it's almost like the crash of the giddiness where like reality sets in of like, he's a client, I can't do this. And then all of a sudden she's got this like, I don't know. It just was kind of out of place.
I hear you. I think what this was, actually, I think the trigger for it was picking up the blue envelope.
Okay.
At the end of the day. So she has this like session with him where it's like they're flirting, they're talking about, her going to get coffee at the place he recommends. He wants a full review. He says, I'll see you next week. And like it feels very flirty. It feels like full of possibility. And then she picks up the envelope and remembers and is confronted with the fact that this is a transaction to him. Okay. So she feels. I think that
that does make sense.
The little blue envelopes at the desk as she left feels like the trigger where then she knows what's going to be in it, and it's $100 as a payment for the service she provided, and that I think is what kind of like sends her into this little depressive spiral of basically this isn't real. And she says she ought to be celebrating, ought to be continuing to revel in her reversal of fortune despite the oddity of her new job. There was no reason for the bubble of despondency that had taken up residence in her chest, no reason she could think of other than one, and once the thought occurred to her, Violet knew it was through a fact that boded poorly for the future, it would be a whole week before she saw him again.
Yeah. Okay. That does make more sense, because I was like, she should still be all excited, but that does kind of, that reality check definitely would kind of sober you up a little bit after that.
A little bit. Just a little bit.
So she goes to this coffee shop.
The coffee shop that he recommended.
And she's like overwhelmed by the fact that there's so many different mythological creatures around, and how like she feels like she's the only human in there, and she's overwhelmed. The barista asks her if it's her first time here and suggests that a certain latte, which I thought was nice. And then all of a sudden someone comes up to her and is like, oh, great, you're here. Come with me. And she's like, she just kind of follows along because she's like, oh, she looks like a human. Okay, there's another human here. Maybe we're just going to bond over being the only two humans in this place.
1, this is my favorite character. Yeah. 2, this is my favorite like representation of girls, girls supporting girls out in the wild.
Absolutely. So her coffee order gets called, and the girl goes, perfect timing, he's gone. Would you, and also I think she's British, I'm not gonna do my British accent, but she said, would you be a lovey and snag mine while you're up there? It's the lavender Earl Grey for Gilly. And I have, like, girlhood at its finest for this whole situation. Yes. But she does end up becoming a really close friend for Violet. She is actually a vampire, not a human. And she works at La Vie Rouge, which is a vampire-centric restaurant in Cambric Creek's business district, which they collect blood from bleeders, as she calls them. And they create dinners out of blood, so for vampires.
And then they also have like a regular kind of restaurant fare for non-blood consumers. The thing I love about Gilly is she is a vampire.
Yeah.
She was turned into a vampire as a university student in 1982. Yes. So like she's our parents' age.
Yeah. Yep.
Which is like such a funny thought to me, that like when you see vampires in media, usually they're at least 100 years old.
Yeah.
And so like later we'll get a scene of like her helping Violet prep for her date. And Violet remembers that Gilly is basically her mom's age. Yeah. And it's such like a mind fuck to like think of like a vampire that's just like basically a boomer. Yeah. Like, this is not like a Victorian era, like, oh, I'm just not caught up with the times. No, this is a boomer vampire.
But also, she's so, like, current with everything that, like, it's, I think probably because she spent a lot of time with people around that age she's, like, aged out of those older groups, you know what I mean?
Generations, yeah. Yep. The other thing that I love about this conversation is, like, Gilly's describing the bleeders, the people that come in to donate blood, and they are very similar to the types of clientele that Violet gets, and their jobs feel
Violet
similar.
Says a bubble of giddiness rising within her. So you're taking the blood from menu donors, and sometimes they're jerking off. But also, it says the two goblins at the adjacent table paused their conversation to glance up at her enthusiastic exclamation as an orc at the table across from theirs raised a thick, dark eyebrow, a smile tugging at the corner of his full lips around his tusks. And I said, monsters, they're just like us, because, again, we have had a very similar conversation out in public and had the same reaction of people around us.
This is so true. Oh, my God. Oh, we are guilty of this.
So monsters, they're just like us. She wanted to learn more about the area. It says she wanted to see what that intriguing little shop was with the stained glass windows and learn what a talon dip entailed at the nail salon, wanting to explore all of the interesting corners of Cambric Creek, which to her would be all of it. I said the world building is really fantastic. Like, she's thought of everything.
Yes. I am obsessed, like... We even get like a little nod to like the housing market in Cambric Creek.
Yeah.
And how, because it's such a desirable neighborhood, we don't even know the male main character's first name yet. We'll get there. But his neighbor is not a minotaur. She's an elf.
Yes.
But she bought the house next to his, which was clearly designed for a much larger race, because it was the only one in her price range that was available. And her real estate agent was like, yep, you're just gonna have to use step ladders. It's so well done. I'm obsessed.
The amount of detail that goes into this world building is wild for some. I mean, I know it's a whole series, so there's definitely but it was really, really well done.
It was really well done, and it wasn't overwhelming, and it was just enough. In last week's novel, in Railed by the Easter Bunny, felt like we weren't getting enough. It was a much shorter story, to be fair. But the details that we got about this world felt so effortlessly mentioned, for the most part, as part of the story, that it felt like it was just filling in the picture that we were already looking at, as opposed to us looking at something and then it being oh, and this thing over here, and you're wait, what? And it kind of throws you out. This was perfect. It was just enough.
I mean, as much as the back and forth with the timeline goes and how that's not great, the world building more than makes up for it, I think.
I agree.
Back at work, this makes me laugh. So one of her clients, it says she nearly lost her grip as the minotaur above shifted, repositioning himself to be able to thrust harder against the hole in the bench. She had no doubt that he was likely a terrible lover, if the sharp, erratic bobs of his cock were any indication. Being on the receiving end of that would be like getting a root canal for your vagina. I am dead. It was so funny.
Deceased.
So she gets this is another day. So the time passes quickly. I would say this novel is kind of probably over the course of 6 months or more.
Yeah.
Which
somewhere in
which
there.
Is interesting, because there can be a 500-page book that is in the course of a week, and then this is just around 250, and it probably spans about 6 months.
Just about, yeah. I feel like it glosses over the time periods that it needs to gloss over, and focuses in on the interactions that you care about. It does a good job of moving things along without feeling like it's speeding too fast.
So she starts exploring the neighborhoods around, and this is where I'm she's bordering on obsessive stalking at this point.
A little bit.
She doesn't know where he lives, but she's trying
she's
to
imagining
she's
it.
imagining, and I said I'm kind of concerned for her with the lengths that she's taking this daydream. I know that there's going to be the happily ever after, but it just was not great. So she gets back to work, and her boss is I've got good news and bad news, and she's I'm gonna get fired. They found out that I have a crush on this client. I'm gonna get fired, and then that there's a cancellation. That was the bad news. And the good news was that the client after that canceled as well, and he had requested the milkmaid scrubs. So, you're going to have an easy afternoon because you've got this break now, and also you don't have to deal with one of the
good little cows.
So she gets to take a break for a little while. Again, we're thinking of things that are, way past their cute little banter of what sort of child a human and a minotaur would have together.
Oh my god.
So she goes to the coffee shop, and she can feel the heat from the patron in line behind her as she gave the cashier her name, suddenly stepping forward close enough that if she were to step backward, she'd be trotting over their toes, a discomforting closeness. It's him. He's right behind her. He pays for her coffee.
Keep in mind, she's supposed to be meeting Gilly, who is meeting her there and has just grabbed a table near the window.
So she ordered her own coffee. He came up behind her. He ends up paying for it. And he wants to move things along. Like, he wants to, he
Yeah.
essentially wants to ask her out. Also, I said, she thinks to herself, at least you're wearing decent clothes today and not just leggings and a crop top. And that is relatable.
Oh my God, yes. And the reason why she's wearing nicer clothes is because she hasn't done laundry.
Also
I think
relatable.
is what it said. Also relatable. It's like the only thing left that's clean is nice.
So, as they're waiting for their drinks, the barista says Roark, which she finally finds out that his name is Roark.
Yes, a good name for a Minotaur.
Yeah, I agree.
Think.
It's Rourke. So
Yes.
she says, "Are you and L'Oreal coming to my Iris Day cookout?" And
the vibe.
my stomach sank for her as well. Like, so it says Violet's warm feelings for the you-faced woman shriveled as she continued to good-naturedly carp over Roark and the mysterious L'Oreal, having missed the last several parties she'd thrown. Of course, he wasn't single. Of course, there was a girlfriend in the picture. Maybe even a wife, she realized, with a sinking stomach. So he, like, asks her...
Well, she's, like, berating herself internally. And, like, as we do,
you know, like, idiot. Of course he's got a girlfriend.
So stupid. Yes, jumping immediately to the assumption,
like,
that
how could I think he was flirting? Obviously, it's just a client. I'm such an idiot.
Indeed.
And he tries to ask her, like, if she wants to go for a walk with him or something, and she's like, I'm actually meeting someone. And he goes, a lunch date, and she's like, yeah, and he's mad.
He is mad.
And then, like, he leaves, and she goes to meet with Gilly. And Gilly is so real for this. She's like, who is that big hunk of meat that you just were talking to with stars in your eyes?
The specific words were, who was that delicious slab of beef?
Yeah. I mean... So then she's like, nothing, it's fine, he's a client, whatever. Again, is that a HIPAA? I'm not sure. So she tries to ask her a question to, like, throw her off the scent. And she goes, no, that's not going to work. We can discuss the intricacies of the vampiristic lifestyle and the maintenance and upkeep of an asymmetrical haircut another time. I want to hear about that big sexy friend of yours. He quite gave me the shivers. Looks like the type that might enjoy taking you over his knee if you've been a naughty girl, if you know what I mean. And I'm like, again, here for it.
Gilly's the best, y'all. But yeah, so this sends Violet on an internal kind of adventure, imagining what that might be like with Roark. But then,
so that same day, she
gets herself in check and goes back to work.
So she had that break because she had those cancellations, and then that same day, she's got that purple sticker on her clipboard. So, like, he's coming back. So she saw him at the coffee shop. And she has to face him again. And she considers briefly, like, I should just call it sick. Say I don't feel well, have somebody else handle it. Yeah. But she's like, no, I don't want to, like, screw over my coworkers like that. I need to make sure that I go in and just deal with this, like, put on my big girl panties and get over it kind of situation.
However, the thing that she's struggling with is she has an earner in the afternoon who's on the phone on his Bluetooth while she's kind of, like, getting mentally prepared for her appointment with Roark afterwards. And he's saying, maybe you can talk some sense into him. Janeth, I'm just saying, the second that ring goes in, that's it. It's all over. They can still do the whole ceremony and vows thing, and if it's not a huge fucking mistake, he can get the ring put in for their anniversary. He's your brother. You need to talk to him. It's not too late to back out. But so then she starts to think about all of the Minotaurs that she's seen come in with a ring in their nose, and Roark has one too.
Yes. So she asks him, like, I have a cultural question for you. If it's not
okay,
if it's all right to ask, if I'm not overstepping. And she asks him about the rings, like the bull ring that you would think of. And he says, historically, it's a symbol of ownership, being bound to another. The modern usage is almost always to signify being bound to another in marriage. And she...
And
again,
of course she's losing her goddamn
ready
mind.
To cry.
Yeah.
And then he says, I've been divorced for about 2 years now. Just haven't had the damn thing taken out. At first I wasn't ready. Now I'm afraid it's going to hurt.
And then we start to see that little glimmer of
And she's
hope.
like, oh, okay, you're divorced. I can work with that. And then she's ballsy. Because she goes, who's L'Oreal?
Well, so he asks first, because she's still thinking that L'Oreal must be a girlfriend.
Yes.
And he asks her how her lunch date was. Yeah. And then she goes, sounds like you've got some fun weekend plans coming up. And that's when he explains, like, that the barista lives in the same development and holds a party. And so then Violet's got the balls to ask who the fuck L'Oreal
and
is.
I loved it. And it says there's no way her tone could be construed as anything but antagonistic, and fire engulfed her the instant she'd spat the question out, mortification burning her alive. She only hoped it would put her out of her misery swiftly. He
so good.
tells her that L'Oreal is his neighbor. Who has an orc boyfriend. She's an elf. She's got an orc boyfriend that they used to go to stuff together because they were both single. But now that she's got this boyfriend, like, people are wondering why she hasn't been around as much. And he's like, I'm not the boss of her. Like, she's got stuff going on. So, like, I'll go if I can, but...
So she's starting to realize that he was trying to ask her out in the coffee shop and she jumped to conclusions. And so then she fesses up and says, my friend Gilly, that's who I had coffee with today. I met her last month at the coffee shop. She kidnapped me to keep from talking to one of her clients at work, and we've been friends ever since. And he goes, that's who you were meeting? Like... So, like, everyone realizes
that, like, miscommunication trope.
Yep. I did like that we have, like, a brief moment where he's like, she's a vampire? Like, do vampires even drink coffee? And Violet laughs and says she orders tea and she doesn't drink it. She just holds it and smells it. Says it helps her remember. And I love these little tidbits. They're so good. But, yeah, so they, like, kind of settle back into explaining, like, Violet talks about how she grew up in, like, an all-human suburb, and so, like, a lot of this, like, introduction to different cultures is very new to her, and so she's kind of fascinated, and she's like, so an elf and an orc live next door to you? Like, what's that like? But yeah, so all of that, they, like, are getting back onto their normal footing of, like, discussing and flirting and talking, and... she expresses that she wants to visit Gilly's restaurant.
The last line in this chapter is, so the ring out and a vampire restaurant, we'll have to see what we can do about that. I'm hoping that it was him that said that, but you really can't tell.
You cannot tell who said it.
So he's like, okay, I gotta get this ring out and then I'm gonna take her to that restaurant. Like, that's essentially what I'm hoping the author meant by all of that. So there's another conversation that she's having with Gilly later, and it makes me laugh. She's like, you're all a bit curious, like all of the humans, just a little inquisitive, and it's always female humans. It's always human women coming in. She said, come to try a new place, try food you've never heard of, and then you find out that Naga, who sold you insurance last week, has 2 cocks, and obviously you're curious about that as well. So then you ride one of those cocks, just to see what it's like, of course, and then take a turn on the other. And then he slips them both in, and there's no human with one boring little cock who will ever be good enough again after that. So not now that you've been DP'd by a sexy snake man whose name you can't even say. So then you move to a place like this, and it's all very clean and respectable, and no one ever lets on how horny they are to try something new, and it's only ever women.
I fucking loved this. It was like coming home. I don't know. Like, this is just such like a validation of the monster fucking genre, you know, where it's just like, Gilly knows. She knows what it is we're here for. She knows that the idea,
So also, like, there's one guy that originally Violet thought was human. Yeah, like, she sees at the coffee shop all the time. She finds out that he's a werewolf. He works for the fire department. And I guess him and his brothers are kind of all big players. So Violet goes, you're saying every human in town's only here because they want to be dicked down by other species. And Gilly starts telling her about the werewolves parties that he has. And she goes,
Yes.
humans come from towns away all over, all hoping for an invite because deep down it's every girl's fantasy to be fucked by the big bad wolf.
I think the number of times in my notes that I have I'm deceased, I think they're always after a Gilly line, frankly, but like so many times.
It's the perfect, and I mean, it's a common character to have in TV and books. Like, she's that perfect, snarky, says whatever she wants, a little inappropriate best friend character, and I love that.
Love it. I'm obsessed.
Back at work, it's a Tuesday. Now, he always comes in on Fridays, right before the weekend. So it's a Tuesday, but she got a purple sticker. She also has a trainee shadowing her that day who sucks at her job. She says to her, which is funny to me, that like she is pretty blunt with her and says, well, I'll be honest, you need to watch the training videos again. Your technique is lazy and you're not paying attention to their charts. The notes are there for our benefit, you know. Get them in, get them out, and on with their day so we can fit in more clients. Basically, she said it was like too robotic the way that she did it when she like watched her, let her do her own thing or whatever. And the girl's like, well, whatever. I don't care. It's just they're still, the end result is the same. And she's like, but it's not just about the end result. It's about the experience for them as well. And then he comes in for his appointment and she's like, there's no way I'm letting her do this one. So she's like, I'm taking the last one of the day. And then they're just chatting like normal with her in the room, which I have notes that like cute, he's still chatting even though there's someone else there. But also, is this trainee gonna like be pissy about being told that she sucks and then tell on Violet for like flirting
having
with this?
a rapport with him? Yeah.
Because he goes, I'm doing it. I have an appointment for this weekend. I'm taking the plunge. And she's like, what are you talking about?
Well, she says you're finally going to cut that scruffy hair. And he goes, what? No, I'm getting the ring removed. But yeah, there so much of this interaction felt not appropriate to have in front of the trainee.
And I have another highlight here that she's like, oh, it's Tuesday. Like, does this mean you're not going to come in later in the week? And he says, oh, I'll be here. I've been needing to masturbate more often lately. This weekend, the urge was especially demanding. I thought coming in for a good draining might help take the edge off until Friday. And I said, there is no way that this trainee is not going to say something.
Which she doesn't, by the way. Like, it never becomes an issue that Violet has this relationship with a client.
And I mean, we didn't need any more conflict in here, so like, I'm glad that it didn't, but there was the potential that there could have been some kind of issue. Yeah. For sure.
Yeah. I thought they did a good job with the conflict also.
Yes. Well, and there comes some conflict because her great aunt dies and she is away for 2 weeks.
And so this part was confusing.
Yes, it was. Again, with the timeline piece of it. Because it doesn't really say that until later. You have to go back and forth and figure out, like, what happened when. Yeah.
So basically, she's like, I'll see you on Friday. And then he's getting his ring out on Saturday. And then and then the next chapter starts. And it's like, it's been 2 weeks. And it's not clear why. And it sounds like she was on vacation. And there was just like, it didn't have to be this confusing.
Yeah, agreed. So he comes in like the beast again. Where were you? Where have you been? I had to practically twist someone's arm off just to find out if you still worked here. And she's like, I had some time off. Like, you were fine. Yeah. And he goes, don't give me that. I can't believe you literally left me in the clutches of that amateur. I was chafed after the last time. Chafed.
She was unable to hold in her laughter. It's so funny. Like, I think he calls her stiff grip Sally or something later on. It turns out that her great aunt had passed. And basically, I thought this too was a good explanation of like you can have very close familial relationships with people who seem distantly related to you, and it's hard to explain to other people the grief that comes with losing someone like
right,
that.
where it's like a great aunt is who passed,
Right.
and people are like, so what? They were old, whatever. It's not your grandmother, but it's like the relationship was more like that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so, like, they go through their motions of doing the actual collection. They have their banter, but at the end, I don't know. It's hard because like there's so much like banter and like sexual content before we get to like the actual explanation of why she was gone. Because like he literally says, "You're perfect," while she's jerking him off, which like probably isn't appropriate in this context. But then like she's describing touching his cock and says circumcising this would have been a crime. She thinks that. She doesn't say it out loud.
Because he said that
would have been too much.
stiff grip Sally, I thought she circumcised me at one point, is what he says about stiff grip Sally.
Yes, that's right. And basically, we get this indication that the experience that they are both having here is definitely escalating to be more than just the collection, if it ever was just the collection to begin with. And Violet is daydreaming about what it would feel like to be with him and to be like, held by him and to feel him coming not into a collection, machine. And she says she missed him, not just in the sexual context, but like missed being with him, missed talking to him, missed laughing with him. And eventually he does end up coming, and he does like ask, essentially. Like he says, like, it's strange. You see someone every week. You talk to them. They're part of your routine, your schedule. They become part of your life. You share a certain level of intimacy with them. You miss them when they're gone. You can almost convince yourself you know them because you start to fill in the blanks on your own, but you never really know. And then he asked her where she was.
Also, you just skipped right over the fact that he filled more than one bottle.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean
more
to.
than 24 ounces. The second bottle, so like it's an automatic that it clicks to a second bottle, and it says the second barely filled to the quarter line, but still more than 24 ounces is insane. Mm-hmm.
That is a lot of fluid.
Mm-hmm. So she explains that like it was a death in the family. It was someone she was close to. He goes, "Let's get out of here. Come grab a coffee with me, and you can tell me about them." And
which is so sweet.
Yes.
Like, it's so good. It's like, because like it is her last appointment of the day, I think.
Yeah.
And just the way that he asks, like, it's not like an empty platitude. It's not like, I'm sorry for your loss. It's like, let me give you this space to talk about this person that you obviously are grieving and miss. And like, if he wanted to, he would. Like, god damn.
So she thinks to herself, this is it. You can do this. Coffee first, then tomorrow you can lock yourself into his house and never ever leave. It was, Violet was certain, a perfect plan. So like she's excited, but also like still sad about everything that had gone on. So they go to the coffee shop. She was telling him, and he held her hand when like her voice hitched at one point, and I said like it's cute that he's being emotionally supportive because you don't see that all the time.
Nope.
He'd been married for nearly 5 years, so he starts to give her some more background and had started his own company. He owns a home in Cambric Creek, and she says to him at some point, I'm a millennial, being anxious and guilty is my birthright, I guess, right? But I do love it here. And I said, again, I'm being psychoanalyzed.
True.
She does think about how while she was home for those 2 weeks, she did go out to coffee with Carson Tinsley, who's the guy that her mom had wanted her to meet up with. And she said the conversation with her junior high crush had been stilted and strange, completely unlike the time spent with the big Minotaur. And it's just, I mean, like, she had a big crush on this guy in junior high, but then, like, it just shows that it's not always gonna work out like that. Like, you can have that immediate sense of calm and comfortability with someone that you just met and somebody you've known for a really long time and could still be really awkward with. So
totally, yes. I feel like, too, sometimes the shared history is what makes it awkward.
Yeah, sometimes.
Like, in
You're
some
like,
cases,
I remember
like,
you when you had braces and terrible hair.
Right. And it's like, I don't know who you are as an adult. Kind of like they are still strangers in some regard. I don't know. It's not really relevant, but it's just something that I was thinking about. It's like, yeah, this guy, since you last saw him, has been married and went through a divorce, like, and it is a completely different person.
So she realizes that they've been there for an hour already. And then he finally goes, look, I don't know how inappropriate this is or not, but I'm a bit past the point of caring. I meant to ask you after I got the ring out. That was the whole point in doing it. I don't like not having the answers I require, and you are just a very intriguing question mark. I missed you, when you were gone. And he continues, I don't want to make things awkward, and I don't want to jeopardize anything for you at work. If you want me to pause my appointments for the time being, I will. Like, he wants to get to know her. He wanted to ask her out. He wants to make sure that she's not uncomfortable. That's why he got the ring out. Like, it was his, like, getting ready to get back out there kind of thing. It's very sweet, very intentional. And, like, again, you forget that, like, it's a Minotaur.
Yes. He says, I'd like to get to know you outside of the farm, and I hope my feelings aren't one-sided. A flash of white teeth as she continued to flounder mutely, her head bobbing in a nod before shaking again, unsure which sentiment with which she was agreeing. But I don't think they are. Would you like to have dinner with me this weekend, Violet? It's just... It's so good.
It is an emotionally mature man intentionally asking a woman that he likes out.
Yes. It's so good. Yeah. There's no room for misinterpretation.
Yes. Yeah.
It is like, I want to get to know you. I want to explore a relationship with you. It's let's get dinner. Like,
Yeah, it's good. So she's with Gilly. And Gilly is helping her get ready for her date. And she says to her, remember, just get up before dessert and take your knickers off in the loo. When you come back to the table, give your old bully boy a present. He'll barely be able to wait until the check comes. Guaranteed. Now we find out that she is giving Violet a Brazilian.
This is crazy. This is actually crazy.
I don't know that I've ever had a friendship close enough that I would be comfortable with them giving me a Brazilian.
No.
I mean, I guess, like, a stranger, fine.
No, it is important that it be a stranger. I need to never, look this person in the eye again. Like, I don't know.
So, friendships are like that sometimes. I just never had those kinds of friendships.
I mean, like, I get, like, I have friendships where I'm, like, not concerned about nakedness, but there's, like, a difference between, like,
up close and personal.
Yeah. The best part about this is that Gilly had volunteered because Violet was like, I definitely at this point still cannot justify the expense of a salon. Yeah. But Gilly had volunteered, insisting that she'd had salon experience over her vast, long, vampiric life. It wasn't until she was lying on the kitchen table, naked from the waist down with her knee pressed to her ear, that she remembered Gillis had been turned in the 1980s and was around the same age as Violet's mother. And then the best part is that after she's done... Oh, this is where things get... The timeline gets weird. We'll get to that in a second. After she's done, Gilly declares, See, I'm an expert at this. Like, can you believe they only let me be a shampoo girl at the salon? Like, so she hadn't even done Brazilians at her job at a
You know
salon.
what?
Like,
Fake
it's
it
just
till you make
great.
it sometimes. You gotta have that confidence that girls can do anything.
Insane. But yeah, so this was where the timing got weird
Yes.
because so like Violet is prepping for her date. The problem is that this is now like
Months
the
later.
bajillionth date.
Yes.
Yes. Like, ugh.
So it says she'd lost count of the dinner dates and midday lunches, the romantic excursions through the quaint little town, and the gallery visits in the city. So months have gone by. In that time frame, she has found his ex-wife on social media and fully stalked her. Like,
yes.
fully stalked her. And again, we've all been there. We have all been there. So she really was looking for pictures of him because he doesn't have a social media presence. There's no photos of him to speak of. No accounts she could find under his name, which didn't surprise her. And this is where he says, like, we drifted apart and pretty soon we were strangers who happened to live together. I was far too boring for her in any case. And she goes, well, I have great news for you because I'm the most boring person I know. He says, you don't bore me, not in the slightest.
It's all
very cute.
We also get a little bit more of a look at the segregation of the different races. This is also where we see her talking about Bridgeton, the city, boasts a multi-species population like most large cities, although humans were the majority. And she had begun to pay closer attention after Roark's comments about majority culture as she went about her days, and discovered that her little corner bodega carried a small selection of items similar to those she'd seen at the Food Griffin. And she'd watched open-mouthed one evening as a petite goblin with wide hips and a sleeve of colorful tattoos clutching the hand of a small child entered the store, moving with purpose to the back aisle. And she tried to imagine being forced to do all of her grocery shopping at the overpriced mini-mart without having half a dozen other options, and remembered the conversation she'd overheard in the locker room one day as Kirami and one of the other technicians bemoaned the skyrocketing property market in Cambric Creek. No wonder other species wanted to move there.
Right.
And so we get more of that world building. And like, you think of, you know, like I think of my hometown in the middle of nowhere that had a big like local chain grocery store that has like the international food
and
aisle.
It's one aisle and
it's one aisle and it's like a bajillion completely unrelated cultures. And it's teeny tiny selections of each one. And so it was like a really creative way to use that real world corollary to kind of use it in this more fantastical setting in a way that felt very believable and just the right like touch.
Yeah, I agree. So they're on a date and he says to their waitress, like, can you send this drink to that woman over there by the bar? And she goes, did you just buy another woman a drink right in front of me? And he goes, I did.
Yeah.
But just wait, she'll be stomping over here in a minute. This way we can make introductions without needing to get up. So he bought a drink for his neighbor L'Oreal.
Yes.
So he says to her while they're waiting, thank you for meeting me tonight. I know Wednesdays aren't exactly the most romantic date night, but the idea of not seeing you until next week didn't sit well. And I said, why am I swooning over a Minotaur?
I know, it's so good. Oh.
So as promised, L'Oreal stomps on over and he makes introduction. Well, she introduces herself and she's like, are you going to introduce me or are you just going to make me do all the work here? And she goes, Violet, I'll warn you now. He's very bossy, and if you go get ice cream, he'll harass you for a taste of your cone. Doesn't matter if he sampled it at the shop. He's greedy. But he's a very good neighbor, so I'd appreciate it if you didn't convince him to move away. Oh, we just got a new patio set. You'll both have to come over for drinks and dinner. Kosh likes to pretend he single-handedly wrestled down a mastodon every time he turns on the grill. It'll be great. And she says,
I love L'Oreal.
She says that immediately Violet liked her enormously.
Yeah.
It was just like, it's interesting to, you know, when you're starting to date someone new, to meet friends of the opposite gender and you're like, What's
Yes.
the deal? Like, is there, you know, so for her to, it's nice to have those kinds of immediate connections with somebody when you're like, I
Yeah.
really, really like this person. And there's no like question or jealousy to it, you know?
Yes. I thought there so much of this was like green flag city, where it was like, yes, he has female friends with whom he's hung out and has a good relationship with that he does not have a sexual history with.
And they have really positive things to say about him.
Yes. And like they have like a good natured ribbing relationship with them. Love that. His ex-wife, like he doesn't have shitty things to say about her. He doesn't have like, they don't have like a checkered past. Like he's not blaming her for the way their marriage ended. Like that all, it worked so well. Like it was like you get that like brief moment because when Violet first finds his ex-wife on social media, she's very glamorous, she's very done up, she's wearing false lashes. And when you go back in time through her timeline and discover like when she was married to Roark, she looked much more au naturel.
Yeah.
Like she wasn't wearing a lot of makeup, she wasn't really like dressing up and being glamorous. And like it's like, oh, like she left him and like reinvented herself and like put on a lot of makeup. And it was just like, yeah, but like she got to reinvent herself when the relationship she was in wasn't working for her anymore. And like she wanted to be out on the town and her partner didn't want that. And like eventually it just became not enough. And that's okay. And like we're talking about how that's okay for people to grow apart and for it to not have to be this big traumatic like breaking. It can just be a mutual understanding of like this isn't what we want or need anymore.
Right.
I think that's great. I think it's amazing. And I don't think I've ever seen it in a romance novel
that's
before.
true. Yeah,
I loved it.
I agree. So they still haven't had sex.
She is so frustrated by this.
She's very sexually frustrated. So he does say to her, because she like tries to reach for her wallet, and he's like, absolutely not. Like, not happening.
Absolutely
and he
not.
says, I don't want you to feel that you don't have any agency here. I might be the one giving all the orders, but you hold all the cards. Your comfort is the only thing that counts right now. And if I overstep, I want you to know so you can tell me so. But that's not happening. Her paying. Don't think I'm unaware we're at different points in our careers. You can say no. You can say you don't want to see me again. You can tell me to stop coming to the farm when you're working. It's dinner, not a down payment on your time. But I'm in a position to comfortably spoil someone. So when you're with me, I'm spoiling you. End of story. And I said, honestly, this almost made me cry.
It was so good.
Because he wasn't making her feel like he was paying for things
superior.
out of any kind of ego thing.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, and he was encouraging her to take her ego off the table too, which I think is really important when it comes to a relationship.
I loved it. I thought it was great. I thought it was a great way of like addressing what could be a power imbalance and making sure that it was clear that Violet held all of the cards and done in a way that was not condescending. It wasn't, I don't know, I feel like in previous books, even that we've read for this podcast, there are like moments where the male main character says something that on its face would be good and then like kind of goes back on that. I think I'm thinking specifically of Poseidon, where he was like, you know, like if you feel uncomfortable, just tell me, but then also is like in this weird domineering position and like puts a necklace on her without explaining what it is and what it means and kind of forces her to her knees. Like where there's like that disconnect between what he's saying and what he's actually doing and how it's like being expressed. And we don't
actions match.
Yes, exactly. Exactly that.
So they're on another date. Like again, the timeline is a little bit weird. They're on the date, the waxing date. This is like the waxing
post wax.
So she had suggested going to a restaurant that had a fabulous dessert cart. She knows that he's got a real sweet tooth. And there was no traditional seating. It was like seating on couches and on the floor and whatever. So she says it happened midway through dinner. She had pressed close enough to be flush against him and his arm had dropped around her at last. Violet felt the moment when he realized his fingers weren't moving over any additional fabric beneath the short skirt of her dress, that nothing at all impeded the smooth glide of his fingertips against her hip, no silk or satin or cotton, not even the teensy strap of a thong. She felt him stiffen slightly against her, his hand pausing ever so slightly in its movement before stilling. So we continue, and I have the notes of, is he fingering her at a restaurant? He is, in fact.
He absolutely is. And it's like, oh.
And then he starts he starts dirty talk at the table.
Dirty talk. Yeah.
In her ear.
This is so hot.
He says to her, I'll take care of this pretty little pussy anytime you want, sweetheart. Anytime she wants to be licked, I'll be here to lick it and make you come. Eating this pussy is going to be my new favorite meal. Anytime she wants to be stuffed with my fat bull cock, I'll be here to fuck you so good you won't be able to remember your own name. I'm going to spoil you rotten, Violet. I'm going to spoil this cunt every way I can. All you need to do is tell me what you need. He wants her to say the specific words.
Yes.
So he makes her come, and then she watched him through heavy-lidded eyes withdraw his hand and suck his fingers clean, as calm and collected as he ever was, just as the server appeared to refill the water glasses. And then she is like, you want to get out of here and go to my place? Like, she's like, it's about damn time.
And he goes, Violet, did you really think you were going to come to dinner and tempt me with your bare cunt? Let me have a taste of how needy and delicious she is, and then kiss me on the cheek out on the sidewalk and go your merry way? Like, you're making it very hard to be a gentleman, but I think it's time to bring you home. Whew. Like, damn. I'll even forgive the use of the word cunt. It's just...
We've just accepted it now.
I do feel like I am less and less bothered by it the more it comes up, because now it's just like
you just gotta release it, release the control over the word. So he asks her something and she says yes, and he goes, yes, what? And I said, is he looking for a yes, sir? Because honestly, I might give him that. He goes, I'm never going to leave you unsatisfied. That's a promise. But I'm not going to do anything that might hurt you, and you're not ready to take my cock. You need to be prepped. Again, this I can get on board with, because we're not talking about how she can't fit both hands around it, or can't fit one hand around it, and then going from immediately it feeling good. So, like, he's going to work her up to that.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, he is.
He also basically says, like, we're at your place, and you don't have the amount of space that I need. I don't want to rip your sheets. I don't want to, like, mess up your house.
Like the hooves on the floor, the space needed for him to move around, the special towels and stuff to deal with all of the liquid that we've been discussing at length. Yeah. So instead, we focus on her pleasure.
Which, I mean,
if you wanted to,
yes. Green flags all around again.
Green flags. Oops, all green flags.
Very different from the oops, all bad guys. We like this a lot more.
Yes.
So she thinks about how, like, if they would have gone through with it at her house, like, it would have made a big mess, whatever. She's, like, still kind of sexually frustrated, but also understands where he's coming from.
Indeed.
So he tells her that, like, on Friday, she should pack a bag so that she can stay at his place.
Oh my god, the anticipation is just so good.
And is this where... Yeah, he had said, like, she was supposed to meet him at his house, and, like, he was going to be coming from work, so he was expecting that she would just kind of let herself in, and he'd get there a little later. But then he cancels his appointment with her after he's already there, and he's like, I'm going to save all of this for you.
Yeah.
And then it seems like he doesn't go back to work, because when she gets to his house on that Friday night, his car's in the driveway. And so when she gets to his house, she realizes that, like, okay, this was definitely designed for someone of his size. It's huge. she walks in and like the doorways are high and the ceilings are high and like it's all so he's not gonna hit his horns again with these male characters with horns on them, something to grab onto.
We love some handles.
So he came out of his bedroom area with a small white towel slung low across his hips and says, "You're wearing far too much clothing."
Incredible.
It's like he was a gentleman, and now that he's not, he's gonna like the dirty talk. I'm here for it.
She's
like, I thought we were gonna go get dessert.
I thought we were going for ice cream, she exclaimed. Yeah.
And he goes, we discussed this. After dessert activities first, then dessert. Then we'll need to take a nap since we're going to dinner in the middle of the fucking night. Because they're going to that.
I loved this.
They're going to the vampire restaurant.
They're going to the vampire restaurant, and like it was a like he had to put his name in, and it was the only reservation that he could get.
And he's like, I don't understand.
In the
They're awake
the
during the day. Like, why does all of their stuff need to be in the middle of the night? This is stupid.
Yeah. And it's such like I don't know. It feels like such like a realistic
man complaint
exchange. Yeah. Yes. Of like, oh my gosh, this is so ridiculous, but because you want to, I'm making this sacrifice.
Exactly.
Like, but I'm gonna be vocal about it.
So she had barely enough time to kick off her shoes before he was drawing the zipper down her back, letting it puddle around her ankles, his scowl growing deeper as he eyed her mesh bra and panties. I can't believe you wore underwear. Now you want to keep your panties on. Violet, did you by chance think I was talking about a different date? Because earlier when he had come into the milking farm, he had said, I've got a big date tonight. You know what? I'm going to hold off. Yeah. I'm not going to do my appointment today. And he says, did you think I was talking about a different date? Mm-hmm. But before he gets into it, he does say, I wanted to say I really like you. I'm glad we took some time to get to know each other. I know this wasn't exactly a traditional way to meet, and I wanted to make sure you knew I was interested in you, not just your perfect tiny hands. Sweet.
Very sweet. It's so good. And yeah.
And then she uses his horns as handlebars.
Yes, and we are here for it.
So then they finally have sex, and she says the stretch of his swell still a burn, a deeper pressure, and then he groaned, bottoming out in her at last. She'd never before been so full, so stuffed, and she was sure the outline of his cock would be visible through her belly, were she not still face down on the bed. So, like, we don't get that immediate, like, oh my god, this feels so good. You get that kind of more realistic, like, it feels good, but also there's definitely, like, some, it's almost like intrusion, if you will.
Absolutely. And this was after he had first used his fingers. He used a lot of lube. He'd done a lot of, like, basically maneuvering. Like, it says he scissors his fingers back and forth to, like, get her prepped, like, to start, like, get her to the point where she could take something that large. Like, this all very, very good, frankly.
And then she says, please empty those big balls inside me. I want you to give me every drop. And I said, we were doing so good with the dialogue until here.
Yep.
It was so bad. So after all of that.
And it was like, the buildup of it was so good, too, because I'm going to go slow, but I want you to tell me if it's too much. And like, please, 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 like, I need it so bad. You don't need to beg for it. It's yours anytime you want it. I'm going to spoil your pussy with this big bull cock every day if that's what you want.
I guess his
there's nothing
is good.
Gentlemanly. Yeah.
His dirty talk
there's
is good.
There's nothing
Hers
gentlemanly about the way I'm going to fuck you, sweetheart. Like, it's just everything. And then he's talking about, do you know what happened to the tributes in the labyrinth, Violet? They were given to the Minotaur to appease his lust, his insatiable lust that no man could match. Like, it's so good. It's so good. And then
she...
And then she says, empty those big balls inside
I mean,
me.
I guess she's
it's
trying
not the
to
worst.
match his, like, she knows that he wants specific words, like specific, he wants her to tell him, but she's still learning, I think.
Or maybe we're judging him. Maybe this is what he finds hot, and we should.
Oh, perhaps, but I don't think so. So then at the end, it says, first, though, she had to get up and clean up, which might be quite the undertaking, covered as she was in his sticky sweet cream. And I said, Elle is going to hate this.
I did, in fact, hate that. Thank you. Thank you very much. But she does say, this is it. She thought he'd better be in this for the long haul because he's ruined you for any other cock. And I thought that was very funny and that all worked. But yeah, no, I could not deal with that. So we have basically like a little bit of a time skip here, and they're having a lazy Saturday. She wants to get up and go to the flower shop's plant sale. It turns out she's interviewing with one of the families that's like big and influential she'd like talked to the family that was big and influential in Cambric Creek. She's interviewing for a job there. And I think here is probably the place where we get the most, I would say, like overwhelm of like info dumping, because she ends up like, the author tries to put a lot into this last like chapter basically of like, so in it we get Violet interviewing for the job, Violet talking to Gilly about an apartment that's opening up in Gilly's building, Violet talking to her mother and revealing that she's probably going to move to Cambric Creek and that she has a boyfriend who's a Minotaur, which is going to be a lot for her mother to take in. And her talking to L'Oreal, Roark's neighbor, about dating someone outside of your race, and how all of those things that like things that you don't even think about like kind of become an issue, things that are not issues like still have that underlying tension, like meeting their family and like there being traditions that you don't know about. And then like on top of that you get like comments out in public, and they're having that bonding about being seen with like their significant other and having people make comments. There is a very funny moment between her and L'Oreal that I wanted to call out, which was Violet says something to the effect of, your boyfriend's like huge. How does it fit? And L'Oreal's like, this is why I love you. You're not afraid to ask the hard-hitting questions. And then we get like a little bit of lore that elves are stretchy because their race actually is kind of endangered. And so they've adapted over time to be able to interbreed with other races more easily than humans.
And then she says that they'll be out and she'll see a human smaller than you with an orc as big as Kosh, and I just want to tell her, honey, he's going to perforate your cervix. There's nothing sexy about that. And I was like, now this is realistic. Like, this is what we're talking about when we say stop making them be so gigantic, and her being like this tiny little virginal pixie thing. Like,
yeah, and so then like we get like her interview starting, and she like gets to chat with this werecat in the coffee shop where it all kind of started in Black Sheep, where she met Roark in person outside of the farm for the first time. And then we kind of wrap it up. She gets the job, she gets the apartment, she's excited to kind of still have her own space.
So there is one scene in here in this last chapter, which there's a couple things. One, she did say she needed the security blanket of having her own place, her own independence, a way to keep herself from going too dependent on his money and bossiness and desire to have her around all the time. So, like, she knows that their relationship is going in that direction, but she wants her own apartment. So that's one thing. And then she's at his place, and she sees him, like, he was mowing the lawn, and she hears him in the kitchen. He starts to head towards his bathroom, and she's like, when she heard the shower in the master bedroom start, she was certain he'd be grateful for some company to soap his back. And I said that romance authors always try to make a shower sex scene seem sexy.
Yeah.
And it's not realistic. Shower sex is always written so much better than it actually is in real life.
I could not agree more. And like, I feel like I tried shower sex because of romance novels.
You're like just disappointed.
It's just disappointing.
And there was also one that says his cock slipped from her like a particularly corpulent eel, swinging loose with a gush that sent a ripple up her back, splashing to the shower floor like an overturned bucket. And I just said, ew. And because that grossed me out so much, everyone else needs to suffer with me.
Thank you. Thank you for detailing it.
Also, apparently there's some sort of enzyme that he keeps in the shower that is able to make it so it doesn't clog the drain.
Yes, another nice little bit of world building, but I don't think we needed the shower scene.
I don't think so either.
Like it was a bit much.
But at the end of that shower scene, she says that she got the job. So it's like an exciting, they're both satisfied, and now it's like, you got the job? I got the job. He called just before I came into the room. And then he says, I hope that apartment is a short-term lease, which is very sweet.
Yes, it's all very cute.
It does kind of end a little abruptly, though. I mean, like, this is much longer than a lot of the books that we've done so far. This is around 250 pages. But there's also, like, the start to a second book. I think it is kind of like a precursor to Violet.
Oh, that might be true.
It is called
A Blue Ribbon Romance.
Yes. So I think that it might be kind of like just a precursor to that whole story. But
anywho,
that's where we end. So
that's where we end.
So what did you rate this one?
Oh, I don't think anyone's going to be surprised that I rated it pretty high. This is a 4-star for me.
Okay.
I think it was hindered by the past and present switching. I think that made it more difficult to follow than it should have been. And I think that was probably the biggest flaw for me, was just being able to follow what was happening. If it had been a little bit more streamlined, if things had been in chronological order and we hadn't flipped back and forth so much, I think it probably would have been a 5-star for me. Like, the characters were great. Like, Violet as a main character was obviously very relatable to us, to me. Like, I really enjoyed her voice. I enjoyed the writing. Roark was a great male romance hero. Like we said, oops, all green flags. Loved him. Loved Gilly. Loved L'Oreal. Loved even her relationship with her mother. I thought that was also very realistic. Yes. And the smut was smutting. Sure. Like, there was a lot about this that was very hot. Like, the anticipation, the build up to like the first like oral scenes, and even the build up to the first kiss. Like, it would have been perfect if everything had kind of been presented in chronological order. You know, like that. So that's where I landed. How about you?
I actually think that this is like a 4.5 for me. Yeah, and actually, it's funny because, like, I think my fan casts are support this, and I'm just realizing this now because my fan cast for Violet is who I think personally, if there were ever a movie to be made of my life, I would want her to play me. So, and she just, so we'll talk about that in just a second. But I agree that the whole, it's definitely the past, the flashbacks. And if there was some way to make that a little more clear, I think this probably would have been a 5-star for me too.
I am so glad that you liked it, because we were discussing whether we were going to read this one for this week because it was so long. And Kay was like, have you started it yet? Like, do you know, like, or should we pick something shorter? And I was like, no, I've already started it and it's great. And I really want to talk about it. And I do think you'll like it. And so I'm really glad that you enjoyed it because it was so fun.
So you want to know who I picked?
Yeah, on that note, I want to know about the fan cast.
All right. So Violet, and like I said, she is like, I want to be friends with her in real life. I feel like if there were a movie about my life, I would want her to play me in it, and that is Lucy Hale.
Lucy Hale could be.
I love her as an actress. I feel like I watched Pretty Little Liars when that came out. She was in that. I like the Cinderella story that she was in, like all of those things. I've kind of grown up with her acting, so I really like her as an actress. Now, Kirimi, this is going to seem terrible, but this is literally what I was picturing in my head. So the way I was picturing Kirimi was like kind of ant-like, and Anya Taylor-Joy, I guess it's like the way that her eyes are spaced a little further apart gives her kind of more of that look, and
I think so. They like the description for Kirimi is like almost doll-like, and I feel like Anya Taylor-Joy is like a walking Bratz doll. Where her face is just proportioned in such a way, and her eyes are like big and wide set. Like, I think this fits perfectly.
Okay. Now, my selection for Roark might seem like a lazy cast, but quite honestly, with how much I liked this male main character, it would be doing a disservice to the romance industry as a whole if I did not cast Roark as Henry Cavill. It might seem like a lazy cast because obviously he could fit into any male main character role, but in this case, I have said that I would not use him until it was absolutely necessary, and this, for me, was absolutely necessary. He is big and beefy and hairy, and, strap some horns on that man and take him for a ride.
No notes. And, Henry Cavill, nerd and method actor that he is, I think would take this challenge seriously to embody the Minotaur.
I agree. I love him, because also I feel like he's aware that everyone thinks he's attractive, but I also think he doesn't think he's as hot as he is, which is a good quality to have.
I agree. I feel like he's got some Pedro Pascal energy where he's he knows that everyone thinks he's hot and is kind of pleasantly surprised by that revelation.
And he also might make a statement in a random interview that he's into submission like Pedro Pascal did. Just gonna throw that out there. Anyway, Gilly, I have Kristen Ritter, and
as well.
She just the very pale skin tone, the dark hair. She's got that vampire vibe, and
she
also
really does. She also
snarky.
has that snarky. Yes, exactly. Oh my gosh, I love
and
this.
Lastly, L'Oreal, I've chosen Emma Watson.
Very elf-like.
Yeah, she's tiny. She's got that little pixie face kind of, and she just seems like a sweet, and L'Oreal's character just seemed very sweet. So
I think this works. I could absolutely picturing Emma Watson warning Violet of he will demand a taste of your dessert, And she'll say it so earnestly. It'll be so good.
So that was my cast for this time around. Now,
you've outdone yourself, Kay.
What is it that we're reading next week?
Oh my God. So next week, we are revisiting our good friend who we read for our very first book on this podcast. Vera Valentine is our first time repeat author, and we are going to be reading Cold Sweat, which, if my understanding is correct, because once again, I have learned next to nothing about what this book is about.
Yeah.
But I do believe that this is, in fact, a Kool-Aid Man romance novel.
It is.
Oh my God.
I've read it already. I've been trying to get this into our rotation for weeks now, but we weren't ready to repeat an author yet. So I'm so excited.
can't wait.
This conversation, I think it's going to spark quite a bit of really thought-provoking questions. Even though it's about the Kool-Aid Man, we're getting back to that really super silly kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But also, I think I'm interested to see how we're going to talk about it because I've already been through it.
I look forward to our conversation. Are you reading anything outside of the Kool-Aid Man romance?
You know, this was another long one this week, so I didn't really have too much time to read anything outside of this one. So what about you?
So despite the fact that this was a long one, I actually had started it the week before, and I actually just got I ordered the box set of Tracy Dion's The Legend-Born Cycle, which we talked about her in a news segment a couple of episodes ago.
Oh, right, that she didn't get a good
display.
Barnes and Noble display, right?
Yeah, yes. So the third book in the series just came out, and it is phenomenal. Okay. I haven't read the third one yet. I tore through the first two. And
in this past week?
Yes.
Wow.
And look at the size of these.
Whoa.
It was so good. I cannot recommend it enough. If you grew up on Harry Potter and you kind of wish that you weren't raised on Harry Potter because of the way that particular author is behaving these days. Percy Jackson, this is a YA fantasy story, but it is so good. There's so much here. There's so much history. There's so much discussion about being Black in America, being Black in a predominantly white space. It's it's Arthurian legend in the modern day, and it's a Black girl entering this English Welsh history and just turning everything on its head. It's so good.
Okay, I'm trying to think because it's sounding familiar. Oh no, it was a different series. The Marvelers series is another one that I read that reminded me of this a little bit, and it's kind of like that Harry Potter has the magic. Also, it's YA, and it's a young Black girl.
Yeah.
So that's another one, the Marvelers series by Danielle Clayton.
Oh, yeah, okay.
The Controverse series is what it's called.
Okay, I'll have to look into that.
But that's another good one in case you're... Yeah.
Nice.
Well, you made it this far. Don't forget to follow, subscribe, tell your friends. We are on YouTube now as well, and we've started to post a little more on TikTok, so if you're on there, check us out, give us some likes, and with that,
we're at our wits' end.
See you next time.